All right, hey guys, you're going to fill out your chart that you've been provided, and I would go ahead and perhaps on the back of that, I'll hold mine up just, back here on the back, plain back, I would write these essential questions. So were the progressives successful in making government more responsive to the people? And what would the progressive movement have been like without the muckrakers? Okay, so we're going to move on once you've written those. And we're going to talk about the progressive era. Okay, so basically what you're going to do now is you're going to write this first line up here. See where I've got progressive movement, social problems, and I kind of shortened everything from industrialization, immigration, urbanization. That's what I would do, and that's what it says here on our sheet. Social problems are coming in from rapid industrialization, immigration, and urban growth. All right. Then the next one says progressives were, and I would put 1, people from both parties. 2, they lived in cities, had education, were middle class. And 3, the government should try to solve the problems in the cities. And 4, they wanted progress. They wanted to improve the lives of ordinary people. And that's what it says on your screen here. So progressives are from Democrat, Republican parties. They live in the cities, so they see the problems, but they're educated. So they realize, hey, I've got this education. can use that to help these people. And they feel like the government should take a more active role in what was going on and try to help folks. They wanted, I've got here progress in society. They wanted to get rid of the corruption of the Gilded Age and make a difference, a positive difference. Okay, so we're going to start with the muckrakers. And a definition, journalists who expose scandal. You can write that here where I've got muckrakers in the little title there in the box. Journalists, they expose the scandal. The first one is Ida Tarbell, who goes after Standard Oil, and she basically decides to pursue them and get the Supreme Court to break up the company, which they do. Lincoln Steffens is number 2, involved in the Tweed ring. He writes The Shame of Cities. So he goes after Boss Tweed and writes The Shame of Cities. And then you've got Jacob Riis, who goes into the tenements and sees the filth the people are living in and writes how the other half lives. And then finally, Upton Sinclair, who goes into the meatpacking plant and writes The Jungle. All that is right here. I remember Ida Tarbell, of like tar, which is not really related to oil, but that's how I remember it, is black. So Ida Tarbell goes after Standard Oil Company, and the Supreme Court breaks them up and tells Rockefeller he has a monopoly and it's now illegal. So Rockefeller hates Ida Tarbell. Lincoln Steffens goes after Boss Tweed. And his book is called The Shame of Cities, talking about the corruption in the cities that helps put Boss Tweed in prison. Jacob Riis, we just talked about how the other half lives, and The Jungle exposes all the nastiness. Remember, rats, nails, human beings put into sausage. Okay, so they're very important. Without the muckrakers, you would not have had anyone paying attention to the social ills in society, like the businesses that are treating people bad and overcharging their consumers, like Standard Oil Company, because they had a monopoly. They could jack up the prices. Or like Lincoln Steffens helping to expose Boss Tweed and his corruption. Okay, political reformers is next on there. And I didn't really put anything in the box that says political reform. If you can see that right there, I just left that empty. But where it says number 1, I wrote Robert La Follette. He's from Wisconsin, and he's going to push several different initiatives. And the first, he says, is let's have a direct primary where everyone votes directly. 2, initiative. It starts with the letter I. Amy King, can propose a law. I, the citizen. Okay. He also pushes referendum, which I go to in the next one. and that's where we refer our opinion. There's a issue brought before our state, and we, the voters, vote for or against. We refer our opinion. That's referendum. Recall, you can literally remove a governor from office just for no reason, like you're tired of him, not because he's done something wrong necessarily. And then comes the 17th Amendment, which brought about direct election of senators, 17 senators. Okay, so let's go back to Robert La Follette real quick. Governor of Wisconsin, he says all party members should get to vote for a candidate, not just the party bosses in charge of the party. So he brings the election more to the people. And he uses here initiative right here. I propose a law. Referendum, refer your opinion. The state proposes like an increase in taxes to pay for schools, and you vote yes, I want my taxes to go up 1% to help a school, or no, I do not. You refer your opinion. Recall would be you're sick of your governor and you just want to kick them out. It does not have to be anything illegal. The governor of Illinois many years ago, Chicago, good gracious, California, that's what I'm trying to say. His name was Gray Davis, and Gray Davis was removed from office by the people in California because he had like jacked up gasoline, the gasoline tax, like, I don't know, it was a crazy number, and people were mad at him for that. So they kicked him out and they put Arnold Schwarzenegger in as governor. So that's how Arnold became governor of California, because of a recall. 17th Amendment says senators are elected directly by the people, not by the state legislature, not by the party bosses, but again brings the people in and lets them elect their own senators. So Robert La Follette is known for bringing the people in, and now they're voting in the primary and they're voting for their senators. Okay, next is NALSA, and that is National American Women's Suffrage Association. Suffrage means the right to vote. You think they suffered to get it, suffrage. This runs from 1913 to 1920, so I have my cloak, which is a nice, lovely, not very attractive hat here, and this cloak is kind of a symbol of the women's movement, because women at this time, I can't demonstrate that, have very short hair, and as you get into the 20s, and this really short hat that they wear, and these suffragists are going to march on Washington March 3rd, 1913. So where we had on your piece of paper where we have women's suffrage, you'll write NALSA, which is National American Women's Suffrage Association, the right to vote. 1, I would put what we just said, that they marched on Washington in 1913 demanding the right to vote. 2, I would write this lady's name, all C's, Carrie Chapman Catt. That's one person. She will help be the president of NALSA and get Wilson reelected. She thinks that Wilson is going to help get women the right to vote. Alice Paul, however, is much more revolutionary and kind of out there, and she's going to push the Congressional Union Group. And basically what it says here is she wants the suffrage amendment, and she pickets. She's arrested, actually, and we'll watch a video of that in class. So she's a little bit more controversial. And then it says August 26, 1920, finally the 19th Amendment is official and women have the right to vote. So NALSA starts in 1890. Women don't get the right to vote until 1920, so that takes approximately 30 years. Okay? There's Carrie Chapman Catt and all that information, and also Alice Paul, who's a little more controversial, picketing the White House, pushing for women's right to vote. Finally, they get the 19th Amendment. Okay, child labor. Child labor is here. You saw this in your station, maybe, if you got to this station when we're doing Gilded Age. Children working in the factories. It says 9-year-olds are working 10-hour days in coal mines for 60 cents. That have back damage, become crippled. Children in factories, like I just showed you, working 10-hour days would lose their limbs, appendages. States begin to pass minimum ages for employment and say, you know, we don't want children working that much. Here is child labor. and I just filled it in with 9 years old. You got 10. You had to work 10 hours a day for 60 cents. All sorts of back damage. You were crippled. Many lost their limbs. Then it says they were losing their limbs. It was dangerous work. And number 4 up here. I'm having a hard time. There you go. Minimum age laws. We're trying to reduce the amount of hours children are going to work. All right, prohibition. Women, back to women, thought that alcohol was the root of all problems. Their husbands were working 14 hours a day at the factory. They were basically demoralized from their job. They hated their job. And they would go out and hook up with some street lady and bring home what I call the creepy crawlies, okay? And women blamed all of this, their husbands running around, on alcohol. Because their husbands would go out after working the factory and drink and then, get the creepy crawlies. So the temperance movement is to stop or moderate the use of alcohol. So on here it says prohibition. And so prohibition, if I can get it there, is basically alcohol is the root of all problems in society. The temperance movement said we need to stop or at least moderate the use of alcohol. You have the WCTU, Women's Christian Temperance Union, with Carrie Nation, another Carrie. Just think, across the nation, she wants to slow down the use of alcohol. And basically, the Prohibition Amendment comes in, 18th Amendment, banning the consumption or sale of alcohol. Just think, when you're 18, you cannot drink legally. So the 18th Amendment said we're not going to have any alcohol being sold. Which causes a whole mess of bootlegging, and we'll get to that later in the 20s. Okay, then we have Roosevelt Square Deal, and basically you have the rise of Teddy Roosevelt, Theodore Roosevelt, and he's going to say, I want to give every working man a square deal, means his fair share. So he's on here where it says square deal. I put TR for Teddy Roosevelt. And he said, we're going to get everybody a good deal for the working man, also square deal. You might want to draw a square there for number 1. He helps push through the Sherman Antitrust Act, and that brings about where he goes after J.P. Morgan's company. Remember, we talked about J.P. Morgan. His company here is called Northern Securities, and Roosevelt is saying that he has a monopoly. There's Northern Securities versus U.S. Teddy Roosevelt becomes known as a trust buster because he's busting up the trusts. And Anthracite coal strike, they're using arbitration to prevent strikes. So you're trying to give the people, the working man, his opportunity to strike, but also to negotiate with the boss. And that's what Teddy Roosevelt was all about. He also brings about some really good things, but I really think a lot of this came from the jungle. And this is the last one, his consumer and protection. The first one's the Meat Inspection Act, so now our meat is inspected after the jungle was published. We have the USDA, Department of Agriculture, that checks our food. The Pure Food and Drug Act, which makes sure whatever you're getting as far as medications, that the label says what really is in the bottle. Teddy Roosevelt also becomes known as the great outdoorsman. He wants to preserve the outdoors, sets up the U.S. Forest Service. He puts in place a guy by the name of Gifford Pinchot, who sets up the Forest Service to protect the national parks. Okay, now you can go back and answer your essential questions, but I want to show you a couple pictures till I get cut off. Here is Ida Tarbell. Possibly. There she is, goes after Standard Oil. Here's Lincoln Steffens, who goes after Boss Tweed. Here's the thing about initiative referendum, that basically said the legislator, the state deciding, now we the people get to decide who we vote for. Here are women parading for suffrage, the right to vote during the 20s, or prior to the 20s. Here's Carrie Chapman Catt, who I mentioned. There's her picture right there, but buttons that say votes for women, full suffrage for women. Also, I want to show you Alice Paul, who we will look at in a video. She's the more controversial figure for women's rights. Here's abuse of drinking, which was often a problem, men abusing their wives. So that's why women go after alcohol as the root of all issues. All right, I'm out of time. You guys write your summary and answer your essential questions.